Right, we all appear to be here, so it is just after 5 o'clock. If we could make a start. So, good afternoon, and thank you for attending this virtual meeting of the Scrutiny Budget and Performance Panel. For those who still don't know me, my name is Councillor David Howarth, and I'm the chair of the panel. Please note this is an audio and video meeting. It's being recorded, and the stream will also be live on YouTube. The web address for this is displayed on the council's website. Members are asked to keep their microphone on mute and only unmute when they wish to speak. The relevant cabinet member and officers will present the report, and I will then invite panel members to ask any questions. If any panel members wish to speak, you should use the raise your hand feature, and I will then invite you in order. There will then be an opportunity for any members not on the panel to ask any questions. If the technology fails, then I will adjourn the meeting for several minutes to try and resolve the issue, or if this is not possible, a new date and time will be organised. So please can I ask all panel members to confirm that they can see, hear and speak before the meeting begins, and I will call out each member alphabetically. Councillor Will Adams.
Loud and clear, Chair.
Councillor Colin Coulton.
Okay, Chair.
Councillor Colin Sharples.
Yes, Chair.
And Councillor Karen Walton.
Yes, Chair.
Good. That's everything appears to be working as it should. I'll now introduce our officers and guests. Our officers are Darren Cranshaw, who is the Shared Service Lead for Democratic Scrutiny Electoral Services, and Charlotte Lynch, who is our Democratic and Member Services Officer. Our guests this evening are Councillor Paul Foster, Leader of the Council, Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, Cabinet Member for Finance, Property and Assets, Gary Hall, the Interim Chief Executive, James Thompson, the Section 151 Officer, and Vicky Willett, the Shared Services Lead, Partnerships and Transformation. So item 1 on the agenda, do we have any apologies for absence? I take it we don't, as we're all here. Which takes us to item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest on tonight's agenda? In which case, I will then go on to item 3, minutes of the meeting held on Monday, the 14th of September 2020. Could you indicate that you agree those minutes as a correct record?
Yes, Chair.
Right, I get 4 indications there, so if we can then move on to matters arising from previous panel meetings, those have been circulated. Could I ask members to note the update and agree that those implemented are to be removed from the sheet? If I could have a thumbs up or indication again. Thank you. That then takes us on to item 5, which is period 2, July to September, of the quarterly performance monitoring report. And if I could invite the Leader of the Council, Councillor Paul Foster, and the Chief Executive, Gary Hall, to present the report and answer any questions. And Vicky Willett, Shared Service Lead, Partnerships and Transformation, will also be in attendance should we need to bring her in to answer anything the other two can't. So over to you, Councillor Foster and Gary Hall.
Thanks, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I trust you're all well. The Quarter 2 Performance Report is a transitional report as we move from the previous corporate plan to the refreshed corporate strategy approved by Council in September of this year. Following the approval of the strategy, further work has been undertaken to develop more detailed project mandates and to set up new performance measures ready for reporting at the end of Quarter 3, which is at the end of the December, Chair. This type of development and documentation is a new process to ensure that activity is clearly scoped, measured and monitored. An overview can be provided to members following this meeting if so required. Reporting on the corporate strategy will be more streamlined to ensure a focus on council priorities. Organisation and service level performance will continue to be monitored as per the performance management framework. Each service will develop a business plan to capture their priority actions and service level performance indicators. Business plan monitoring statements will then be available to this panel twice a year to set out service level performance and project activity. And with that, Chair, unless Gary or Vicky have anything further to add, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other comments or contributions there?
Chair, if I may, it's Gary.
Yeah, certainly.
So thank you, Paul. I mean, Paul set the kind of direction of travel. I think it's fair to say that if you look at the report, there are some key projects which we knew in the corporate strategy, and they are being properly scoped, and you'll get the detail of that. But just kind of turning to the report very broadly, there were a number of kind of what I would call continuing or enhanced projects in there, and I think you can see from the report some quite interesting things that needed to be progressed this year. You know, the improvements to governance, the shared service agenda, etc., etc. And if you read through the report, the majority of those are reported as green. We're making good progress on many of those items, and on that basis, I'll commend the report to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Vicky, do you have anything to add? Or
No, thank you, Chair. That covers it for me.
okay, in which case, if we could move on to questions, and if I could start, page 13, paragraph 5. The reports present a position statement on the corporate strategy, but what approach is being taken to monitoring other performance indicators on the health of the organisation, such as gateway customer information, resident satisfaction, council tax collection rates, missed bins, etc. Without these indicators, how can members and our residents know that we are delivering?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'll invite Vicky in if she wants to speak, but I can broadly take that item. So all those indicators that you spoke about are not lost. You're right, they are kind of what I would call operational indicators. So again, we're trying to instill, keep that discipline that you've had previously. It will be done on a regular basis. That information is available and is produced on a regular basis. We use it for managing and monitoring how the organisation performs. As Paul outlined in his note, and it's included in the performance framework, our intention is to bring that information before this panel as part of the directorate report, so that you can then scrutinise the performance of those areas, some of which you set out in your question.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to come in there? Or no? In which case, Councillor Karen Walton.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. Page 15, exemplary council. All the council's priorities are wide-ranging. The 4 projects outlined here appear to be quite narrow in focus in comparison. How can the link between priorities and projects be strengthened to reflect a more ambitious projects and outcomes in the future?
Thank you, Chair. Again, don't know whether Vicky wants to come in on this one. I'll kind of set the scene, and perhaps Vicky will fill in the gaps. I think I would argue that some of that stuff in the projects is quite ambitious. Some of it is quite innovative. Very few councils, for instance, doing a lot of the transformation work and certainly around the shared services work. The digital strategy is quite key, and is building on some of the things that have already been ongoing. And actually, some of the challenges we've got around delivering in partnership do present actually quite significant challenges for all partners, including ourselves. And there is a quite a kind of ambitious programme of activity that's being developed through that partnership. But just in terms of I suppose exemplifying how that's done and some of the outcomes, I'll just hand over to Vicky, because that's the kind of stage we're in now. Vicky.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Chair. So the projects that you can see there, and the way that these projects have been scoped, is so that members can be very clear about what you can expect to be delivered over the next 12 months to also 18 months, so that you can scrutinise effectively, and so that we can set clear parameters by which to measure. So as Gary says, some of these projects are incredibly broad in scope and very, very ambitious in terms of what they're aiming to achieve in line with the priorities. And they are under that theme of exemplary council. So it's about how we're going to progress and develop the organisation to achieve those broader priorities. But these particular descriptions and these projects aim to really focus in on the activity that you can expect to be delivered over the next 12 months, so that you can scrutinise effectively. They will often run over a broader period of time, and there will be add-on bits of work and additional aspects of the programme that will run alongside it. But what you're presented with here are the very tangible things that you should expect to see from the organisation. So I think that's probably a summary. If there's any further questions on the detail of any of the projects, then that is all available. But as I say, these are very focused summaries.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, may I just add a point to there to answer around Karen's question as well, just to perhaps, and Gary and Vicky, don't take this the wrong way, to stop, not officer speak, go back to a bit of, member speak. It's a different language at times, but the corporate priorities have been streamlined, haven't they? And I think we all agree on that. But Karen, if you just looked at, for example, the second one, the transform the way the council operates, within there, as another example to what Vicky and Gary have just said, you've got the shared service agenda, and there's a multitude of changes and programmes and projects that we're undertaking to deliver and transform the way the council operates. And we've streamlined the reporting, Karen, but that doesn't mean that we're not more than willing to share all the data with you. And if, for example, at a scrutiny meeting or one of these panel meetings, you would request some particular information about one project, you only need to ask, and we'll absolutely facilitate that and share that with you. It's just purely we're trying to present a more streamlined approach to the corporate priorities. And as Gary mentioned earlier, also every year on at least 2 occasions, I think it is, there'll be more detailed papers brought to you all on the detailed projects behind the behind these corporate objectives, if that helps and is a little bit more understandable.
Okay.
Chair, it might help if probably we shared the mandates, Vicky. I think there's more detail in the mandates. So once they're completed. Yeah. So
apologies
again,
if I was using officer speak. I'm mindful of that. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Could I also ask people to mute their microphones if not speaking, because we're getting a bit of feedback, echo, or whatever there. Could I bring in Councillor Will Adams?
Thank you, Chair. And just to, it's like me and Miss Councillor Foster on the same wavelength, because I'm going to take you to page 15, the bottom table there, and talk about the transform the way the council operates. The update here is mainly about shared services. While this is clearly important, what else is being done to transform the way the council operates? I know that Councillor Foster talked about a few things there. Could he elaborate on that, or could possibly Vicky or Gary do so? Thank you.
Thanks. Just before Gary steps in, clearly, as you'll be aware, Will, we're looking at every directorate at the moment. And if you remember, I think it was just at the last council meeting, I think Gary, it's either at the last council meeting, I can't remember, or it's the next council meeting that's coming forward. There's some quite detailed data around the restructuring of many areas of the authority, those that are within shared services and actually outside of shared services as well. And we're just, we're striving for excellence, and we are taking the authority forward in a different direction. And I suppose we're trying to still do this, Will, during COVID, which, as you can imagine, is challenging. But I'll give you an example, further examples, the way that we're trying to use ICT for digital inclusion. That is a huge change for the local authority moving forward, which I believe is being very, very successful. And then we have the launch, don't we, of the new website in January, which again is the next step forward for digital inclusion, because with the new website comes a huge amount of options then for our residents to contact us. Because I think we all agree it's a bit clunky at the moment, the website, isn't it? And even if you try and pay your bloody your 25 quid bin. It takes it now. You might as well jump in the car and come down to the civic centre to do that. So that's other areas. We're looking across the board, not just, and this is the important point from me, please don't think it's just shared services that we're looking to make changes how we move forward. It's the shared services, but also the many other areas as well. Gary?
I think Vicky wanted to come in, and I'll add anything if she doesn't pick up. She usually picks up the points I'm going to say. So,
yeah, Vicky, you've indicated you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I was just going to say we're also doing a lot of work with our officers and our staff around organisational kinds of development and change, and how we support them to develop individual performance, and also how they work with teams, how they manage. So we're doing a lot of work around that aspect of transformation and change as well, so that we can help officers to do even more, to do even better, and to understand what we're trying to achieve as an organisation for the residents. So we're doing a lot of work around that at the moment, including leadership programmes and new training, qualification, skills and things like that. So there's a big offer as part of the wider transformation programme to support our officers as well. Thank you.
Okay, Will, you okay with that?
Yeah, I was just, if it will be possible in the future to see the kind of the stats on that, Vicky, in terms of the support that given to officers and the potential development opportunities, if we could see that potentially in future meetings, that'd be great.
Yes, yeah, sure, yeah. I can give one example right now, which is a management development programme called FLAIR that we've offered out to our sort of aspiring managers, and it gives them a whole programme of support and tools, as well as some training to help them develop both personally and how they do their work, and to become future leaders for the council. So that's just one example, but like I said, there's a whole range of things, so we'll certainly be able to share some of that with you, either outside the meeting or at a future meeting.
Thank you very much.
Well, David, that's delivered through the OD plan that we've developed. So again, that might be a piece that the panel might wish to see, so that we can do a bit more of a deeper dive. One of the benefits of being on the FLAIR programme is also you get mentored by me. So good luck to that person.
Well, look, we were looking for positive developments, but never mind. Councillor Colin Coulton.
Thank you, Chair. Page 16, it mentions working with partners to design and deliver better public services. Could you elaborate on this, and how will this differ from our current working with partners? And also it mentions one front door, which is a term that most of my time never heard of. So could you go through this one front door and tell us what it means, please? Thank you.
Vicky, do you want to jump in there?
Yes, I can do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the project around working with partners to improve public services, this particular project is looking at how all our partners come together. So we know that there's lots of different partners who deliver different priorities for us, but by coming together we can deliver them collectively and deliver more and have a bigger influence. So we know that there's lots of change happening at the moment, particularly around health and how health services are delivered. But as a local authority, as a district council, we do a lot of different things that can help our health colleagues to deliver those services better. So while they may focus on some of the medical and clinical aspects of keeping people well and improving people's health and well-being, we also deliver a huge range of services, from creating jobs to delivering sport in the community, community safety, community well-being. We deliver a huge range of support that can help our colleagues to do that better. So that's just one example of how, through the partnership, we're hoping to find ways to do that more effectively and efficiently. So that means that we work together more closely, or we talk to each other more, or we develop shared plans. So we're working on lots of different ways of doing that. And as we go forward, we're also hoping to work more closely with the similar partnership that operates in Chorley, because by doing that we can have a bigger voice and have a bigger say with some of the big partners who have perhaps more resources. So that's really how this project is going to develop. In terms of your particular point around the one front door, that is a specific element of how we've brought partners together to work more effectively together. So the one front door brings together our partner, the Citizens Advice Bureau, and actually builds them into our kinds of frontline support service that we can offer. So we work with the Citizens Advice Bureau really closely through our COVID response, through our community hub model, so that if residents rang the council or called the council and said, I need some support, I need some help, the council had a whole package of services that we could offer, but then also we could turn to our colleagues at CAB and say, can you help this person with debt, or can you help this person with employment support? So we've now formalised that arrangement, and it's called the one front door, because essentially when a resident comes to the council, they will have one front door into a whole range of services. So we'll look to develop that further, and that's going to be something that will provide even more support as we go through the COVID recovery phase. And we may bring in more services into that one front door approach. But what it basically means is that when a resident calls a council, they're also getting access to a whole range of other services and support as well that might be offered by different partners. So it might be the CAB, or it might be a health colleague, or it might be an employment service, or it might be Job Centre Plus. But all those services would be available through that single point of contact, rather than them having to go to lots of different places, fill out lots of different forms, talk to lots of different people. We'll try and make that whole process a lot easier and speed up that connection from A to B, if you will. So I think that's one really tangible example of how we've been able to do that, or one really practical example, not using officer speak, sorry, of how we've been able to kind of move things forward by working differently with our partners. And that's something we're going to do more of.
I can just make this one front door, will that be the gateway? You know, we have the gateway at the moment, which is, I presume, the first point of contact for people coming into the council. So will this supersede, be like a super gateway, or?
I would describe it as an enhancement to the gateway. So the gateway will still exist, and the gateway will still provide access to a range of council services. So if somebody rings up about benefits or council tax support or whatever it might be, the gateway will really quickly fast track those people into the service. But then they'll also be able to say, oh, and if you're having a look at your council tax support, would you like me to, or, you know, would you like to talk to somebody from the CAB about, you know, how you might manage the, you know, whatever aspects it might be, your finances or debt or whatever it might be, and we can put those people in contact then, rather than saying, oh, and if you need some help with this, I'll give you a number and you can ring the CAB. So it's to help make that process more streamlined. So the gateway will still be there. They'll still take the call at the first point of contact. But then they will have a whole range of partners that they can link into, and the CAB are actually physically located alongside the gateway, so there's a really close working relationship there where they can literally shout over and talk or pass the call over. So that's how it should work.
So rather than give a telephone number, they will transfer the person with a query to the appropriate area. Am I right in?
Yes, that's it.
Excellent.
Yes.
Very good. Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Can I bring in Councillor Will Adams, who has indicated he would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that sounds like a great initiative, Vicky. Have we got any kind of timeline for when this might be operational, or as we move forward?
Some elements of it are already operational, so some aspects are already operational, but then the full service should be up and running by the end of this month. So all the agreements have been arranged, have been put in place, and all the processes, and we're hoping to have it fully operational by the end of November.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I could bring in Councillor Colin Sharples.
Thank you, Chair. My question, it concerns the same part of the report, the table on page 16, work with partners to design and deliver better public services. Reference is made to infrastructure development work with the voluntary and community sector through the Times Credits project. Obviously, this is a key sector for us. What else is being done to strengthen our approach here?
Is that me again, Chair?
Who would like to come in to answer that one?
I'm happy to take it, Chair. It's Vicky again.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So that is another aspect that we're looking to develop through the partnership. So it's really important that we're supporting our voluntary and third sector colleagues. Obviously, we've recently approved a new volunteering policy to help make it easier for people to volunteer. And then we've started to survey our groups and partners to see exactly what type of support that they're going to need. And by working through the partnership, we have access to some of the bigger voluntary sector representation and the organisations that represent the voluntary groups across central Lancashire. So we can speak to both the smaller groups through some of the work that we're doing in the communities team, but then also have access to some of the bigger third sector groups as well that operate across Lancashire, as I say, so that we can get that real understanding of what their needs are, and then we can work as a partnership to better involve them in some of the work that we're trying to do. So that's a lot of the work that's going on through the partnership. So to make sure that the groups know where to go and how to get in touch with the council and our other partners, so that they can start to take part in the work and be a key part of how we deliver services. So that's something that we're developing more as we work through the partnership.
Thank you.
Okay, if I could move on to myself now. Page 17, we have a priority that communities can access services when they need them. I had a case where I had a private tenant facing eviction within the week, extremely stressed. I was approached by the tenant's friend to try and help. I then contacted Gateway, was passed through to the homelessness unit, where I was just passed from pillar to post. They wanted more information, so I had to go back, come back to Gateway, get passed through to somebody else. It's a different person. They don't know what I'm talking about. And I really did feel that there was little empathy, and my experience was horrendous trying to provide support for a vulnerable person. So if that was my experience as an elected member, how are services going to improve their approach if it was the tenant themselves that had to go through that experience?
Thanks, Chair. I think it's just not good enough, is it? To be bluntly honest with you, it's just not good enough, and I apologise on behalf of the council to both yourself and to the individual, because one of the things that I will not accept is people being passed from pillar to post all the time, because that's local government can and is, at times do that. So this goes back to this one front door policy that Vicky mentioned earlier, and quite clearly it's an area where we need to improve. I wholeheartedly accept that if that what you've just described is not good enough, and it's an area where there needs to be some significant improvements. And I'm looking at Gary now, just if he wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I fully agree with what you've said. Part of this is maybe a slight change in culture we need about people taking ownership of issues and seeing them through. Yes, it might not be actually my department, but I'm going to see this one through and make sure it happens, and that's part of the culture we're trying to instill in staff. I think what we need, David, is to be challenging people when things don't happen. So, if you pass me through that example or email me with that example, I'll make sure that, a challenge goes back in to understand why that didn't happen and why it was dealt with in the way that you describe, because it's not acceptable.
Okay, thank you. If I could bring in Councillor Colin Coulson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on page 17, it mentions South Ribble Together hubs and the food bank network. What's envisaged with the food bank network? Has it anything to do with the the providing food for school children during holidays that Marcus Rashford's been involved in? And will there be some financial implications to the council for achieving this? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Colin. So where to start? You'll be aware that this council, South Ribble Borough Council, introduced a holiday hunger programme last summer. So we've been running this for at least 12 months now, prior to Marcus getting involved and the, shall we say, the controversy that surrounded the recent government decision. So we started, to say, last summer was the pilot example, and then it moved through to every holiday period now. South Ribble's Borough Council's holiday hunger scheme feeds the kids at the schools in conjunction with the schools that receive free school meals during term time. But what we've also done in the last 6 months is expanded that even further. So when the schools come forward to us and they'll say that they may identify themselves low-income families that require support that aren't necessarily on free school meals. So we extended it, and to give you an idea, Colin, of demand has doubled in 12 months for this scheme. And I will be corrected here by officers, but I think we fed just under 2,000 children during the recent October half-term holidays, providing in the region of 5,000 separate meals. So that gives you an idea of the take up, and we're in the initial planning stages now, Colin, already for Christmas, and we are expecting a huge demand on the holiday hunger scheme. Now, what happens is when the government announce initiatives to support this, we already have the network in place. So basically, the government support feeds into our already pre-existing holiday hunger scheme. Because why would you change something that works really well? Financially, there is a figure it is budgeted for annually. I'll stand corrected. I'm looking at Matthew here. I think we approved something like £90,000, which was initially for a 3-year period to fund this scheme. I can tell you already, given COVID and everything else that's kicking in, that 90k is almost being used within the first 12 months or so. So then, what more widely, when you mentioned the food bank network, what we're seeing in there, this is obviously not to be confused with the holiday hunger scheme, is there is unfortunately a huge take up within South Ribble now and demand at our food banks. And so what we're trying to do centrally is coordinate all the food banks so that they're all working together and providing a better, better, that's the wrong word. They all do an absolutely wonderful job supporting our community, but we're trying to assist them with providing more food and working all together to ensure that we get full coverage for every individual that unfortunately requires the support. To finalise on this, Colin, I think we're all absolutely clear that it could be a long, dark winter for a number of families within South Ribble, and we're just gearing up and getting ready, and the staff do a wonderful job here, and it's not going to go away anytime quickly, in my view.
But can I just ask, are the government providing funding for this?
The government, no, Colin. This was a South Ribble the holiday hunger scheme was a South Ribble scheme to start with.
Yeah, I realise that.
Yeah, the government provided funding for the summer, and the government that funding ended in October, and the government, as you'll be aware, because it was all over the media, the government voted to not continue that scheme. And what I've subsequently seen is that they are thinking about bringing this scheme back in from Easter of next year. So in the interim, we will continue to fund and feed the kids. My understanding was they were going to bring in a scheme that kicked in immediately and helped cover some of the costs towards the feeding the children during outside of term time. Sorry, but I'm now led to believe that they're not providing any funding for Christmas.
Okay.
Perhaps I could come in here just on the back of that. Maybe Councillor Tomlinson might be able to assist here, because I was lobbied extensively as to what the County Council were doing to support holiday hunger during the half term. And I did receive a reply, which I copied Councillor Tomlinson into, that funding had been distributed amongst the district councils. From what's just been said, that doesn't appear to be the case. So could we have confirmation of that one way or the other?
I'm not, as I said in my email, I'm not aware of any such funding coming to South Ribble from the County Council to fund Holiday Hunger.
Right, okay, thank you for that. Maybe we can move on, and Councillor Coulton, I believe you have another question.
I have, Chair. Also with the hubs, it mentions neighbourhood intelligence profiles. Can you tell us what are the benefits of these? And also, it says that the new officers will be helping define and design how the hubs should operate. Will the members locally have some say in how these hubs are designed? And how have the proposals for the My Neighbourhood changed since the review of the community involvement?
Thanks, Chair. I'll come in there. I'm going to come in on the latter part on the community intelligence profiles. I'm going to let Vicky jump in on that in a second. But the answer is that the community hubs will be setting up how the community hubs work, and nothing has changed there. It's that what that's basically saying, as I understand it, is that there's going to be additional officer support to assist each of the individual community hubs in setting itself up how it wants to run. But there's absolutely, and I confirm this, and Councillor Aniela Bielinski-Geld has been on the phone to me this afternoon about this, where she's ringing round and meeting with all the chairs again, hopefully this week, to try and get an understanding of the progress that's been made. You'll be aware, Colin, that there's additional officers being recruited and are now in post for the hubs, and so it has to be a priority to get this up and running as quickly as possible. I think another thing that I hope the committee understand, that with the support that we are required to provide through the COVID community hubs, generally for the entire borough of South Ribble, it is taking up a huge amount of time of the community's team. But I hope you would all agree that has to be, the COVID response has to be the priority and continues to be. But there is I know Aniela is really, really keen to get the hubs functioning as they want to function as quickly as possible. But in respect to the intelligence, I'm going to hand over to Vicky.
Sure. It's Gary. Could I just make a point on the hubs? What we're saying here is there are a number of things operationally that as officers we need to resolve. So, for instance, how are officers going to be organised? Who are leads going to be? How do we ensure there's resilience in the services that we provide? What's the decision-making process for getting things done? There's a whole raft of things yet to be done to organise ourselves in terms of how the hubs work. How's it going to interact with members? All those things need to just be written down so we're all very, very clear about how the hubs are going to operate. They'll be different in all the places, and that's a commitment that's been made by the administration, that actually it's horses for courses. You decide how you want to run it. The officer bit is just how do we support it once you've decided that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Vicky, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just on the intelligence profiles. The profiles will bring together information from a range of different sources to help members. So a lot of what will happen within the hubs will be based on members' local knowledge and understanding of their residents within the particular areas, because I think obviously members know their areas the best. But then the profiles will also provide a range of some data, statistics and intelligence to help give a broader picture. So, for example, that will include things like healthy eating within schools, children who can read by the age of 5, and things like the various statistics, smoking prevalence, community safety, jobs and unemployment. So all those wider things that will help to build a bigger picture of the community. And also within those profiles, they'll be very simple on a page, easy to view, probably green, red and amber, depending on how they compare to the regional or the national picture. So they'll help to also compare how the particular area is in those different bits of data or performance compared to other areas, so either within South Ribble or within Lancashire or within the North West. So it should provide a really quick view so that members can see, right, so I understand this to be the case about my community, but I didn't realise that they've also got a particular issue with this, or that we've got very high levels of unemployment or whatever it might be, and how that compares then to other areas. So it's just to help build the picture, I suppose, and to help determine what particular priorities might be for that area, and also so that we're taking that wider view, not just of the things that are there and immediately visible or that people are telling us to be the case, but also that there's that wider picture of how other partners and services are accessed. So it's a piece of supplementary information really to help members to make decisions, and they'll be made available over the coming weeks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Could I bring in Councillor Karen Walton?
Thank you, Chair. My question is on page 17. It's about the project to deliver a mental health support programme for young people. This is clearly a major issue nationally and locally, especially in the current pandemic. However, the timescales seem to be some way off, as it doesn't seem to the MH2K project, and the results of it are not expected to be launched till September 2021. Why is this so, and what's been done to help tackle the issue in the meantime? And could you actually define what the council means by the term young people, exactly what age range it covers, so that people know exactly who is included in this project? Thank you.
Right, who would like to take this one?
Chair, it's Vicky again. I can perhaps help a little.
Right, would you like to take that, Vicky?
Yes, so I think in terms of the recommendations from the MH2K project, the intention is to review those more quickly now. So the review of the recommendations will be completed by April next year, and we'll then be using those to inform how we develop the mental health support for young people. We'll do that more quickly if we can, in fact. We'd prefer to do it before April, ideally in January, February, so that we can get the type of support arranged and in place, and that's what we're really aiming for. In terms of the age range, it's up to 24. So I think that covers that aspect. Was there sorry, I might have missed another point there. I think there were a couple of questions.
No, it was just to clarify, young people, some people think it's only from sort of 5 to 16, but it is up to age 24. I know, as I said, the Young People's Act, it does go to that age. It's just that the MK2 project was actually published, must be at least 18 months ago, and it seems such a long time that I know it's been in the formatting stages, but it just seems such a long time. It's going to be sort of like 2 years or more for anything to be done. I'm just wondering why it's taken so long. I know the COVID's had a lot of influence, but the report was done quite a long time ago.
Can I just jump in there, Chair, just quickly? Sorry, I think what we need to understand, Karen, that the MH2K project is one element, but the delivering a mental health support programme for our young people is a brand new corporate priority that was only just approved in September, and that pretty much was after or because of COVID that it was highlighted that the significant challenges young and in fact all of us are facing at the moment. I agree with you that the times on there, the programme on there does seem a little bit far off. But I think there's, we do need to remember there are other there are other support mechanisms as well that are already in place that we can make sure our young people and all our community seek. And clearly, we've got to make sure it's right as well. With something as important as this, as the mental health, we need to make sure what we are offering is the appropriate support for our community. So, but where we can bring it forward, we absolutely should. Vicky, anything to add?
Thank you. I was just going to add that there has been some work in the interim. We did a lot of work with Runshaw College and also across Chorley and South Ribble. Some videos were produced by the young people themselves, and then there were also other aspects of some of the action plan delivered. However, the nature of the young people involved was that some of them moved on, they grew up, or they moved to different aspects of their education. So it was difficult to keep track of them, I think, is some of the information that I've understood to be around the issues with the project. But those recommendations we've since reviewed it and very much still stand in terms of the local needs. So we will get on with that as quickly as we can and make sure that we don't lose any time now putting those into plan.
Okay, thank you.
David, could I just possibly give some context to this?
Yes.
So members will be aware that the kind of prime provider of mental health services, LCFT, has been undergoing significant change. It's, if you recall, required significant improvement following its CQC rating. We are starting to see some progress on that now, and what we're anticipating is more of a locality model being developed by that provider. I'm told that all those locality leads will be in place in the next 6 weeks. I think one of the tasks that we've got is really starting to build that relationship back to the one front door piece that Vicky spoke about earlier, the partnership working. I think it has been a little bit in abeyance, if I'm honest, but I am confident now that moving forwards we will be able to engage that provider much better and perhaps be a bit more challenging about some of the things they are and aren't doing. So I think you'll see some progress well before the date that's set out in the documents.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Will Adams has been waiting some time to come in. So.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've kind of been answered already, to be honest. I was going to ask about what kind of partnership working we've been undertaking on regards to mental health, and it sounds like that work is being done, which is great. Obviously, it's a very complex issue and it's something that I come across daily in work, unfortunately. And I was just thinking if there is anything, it's kind of more towards Councillor Foster, from what we can do as members. I know that Councillor Trafford has done a lot of work on this, and there's been talks about potentially having a member champion for young people and their mental health, which I think could be something we could look at. And also just a slight personal disappointment that I'm no longer in the young age group. Just a 24 is quite disappointing. If we could put up to 30, I might be able to get another 11 months of being young, but that's just me being selfish. Thank you.
Do you think you're disappointed? Right. Councillor Colin Sharples.
Thank you, Chair. Page 18, paragraph 16. I want to refer to the indicator of number of residents benefiting from opportunities created by the communities team. How is this indicator going to be defined and measured?
Who would like to come in? It looks like Vicky.
Yes. We'll once we've got the kind of community hub model established, we'll be capturing that through recording the number of interactions. So we're just in the process now of developing. Each of the indicators has something called a data definition, which is a very technical way of saying it tells you what to measure, how to measure it, and then what to write in the number in the report when we finally bring it all together. So we're currently in the process of putting that together, but it will capture the number of interactions with the communities team. So officers will record that in a straightforward format, in an easy format, so that it's not a cumbersome part of their role. But they will capture that, and then we will report it in as part of the corporate performance process. So we're just going through that process now. We're finalising how that's going to be done.
Lovely, thank you.
Councillor Will Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Take you to page 20 and the bottom table on paragraph 18. Percentage of 16, 17-year-olds not in education or training, otherwise known as NEETs. I'm just wondering, what is the council's role in tackling this, and what direct control do we have of it?
Quickly, Gary, before Gary comes in, my view is that we obviously we have the apprentice factory, and we have, you know, that we're championing from the front across South Ribble and Central Lancashire, where we're out with the community, with the schools, with the educational establishments, with the local, the local businesses in trying to get opportunities for our younger people. We also have schemes, as you're aware, through our procurement policies in the council, where we may, for example, as part of any contracts that we award, insist on apprentices and opportunities for our youngsters, and the same with with planning conditions, procurement. And you'll also be aware, Will, that we're looking at the procurement more generally across South Ribble with the community wealth building initiative that Aniela's working on. And so, you know, everything's gearing towards that and opportunities that we may be able to provide to our young people. And, you know, sometimes I'm told that we can't have much influence here, and I absolutely disagree. I think we can have huge influence here, because particularly now we need opportunities. And, you know, we are one of the biggest spenders in South Ribble as a local authority, so we should be pushing all our schemes that we, as part of, we're not just delivering the project, we're delivering opportunity for young people.
Okay.
Chair, if I may, just to expand on that. So usually when you present these statistics, they hide a multitude of sins. So what we will find, and Vicky referred to it earlier, when we start to do the data analysis down at a kind of neighbourhood level, we will find that there are many areas with significantly higher numbers than that. And that's really where the hubs come in. So I might anticipate that maybe one of the priorities for some areas would be trying to challenge and deal with the NEET issue in that particular area. And, you know, part of it is advocacy. Part of it is making sure that we utilise, there are always new schemes coming forward. Kickstart's a new scheme that's been launched by the government, that we utilise those schemes. And latterly, as Paul suggests, using all the kind of tools in our armoury to try and deal with some of these issues in these particular areas. So I do anticipate that once the kind of forum or neighbourhood forum plans start to develop, some of these areas will be picked out and have more detailed action plans thereafter.
Okay, thank you. If I could move on to a question. On page 21, paragraph 19, the middle table, support the council's commitment to carbon neutral. This section doesn't have much detail, so can I ask what exactly is being proposed to support us becoming carbon neutral?
We've got hi Chair, it's Paul. We've got the climate change emergency working group, and I can't see here. I don't know if Councillor Keith Martin's actually on the call or not. Sorry, on the meeting or not. There's a multitude of options that we're looking at here, that they're being worked through as we speak. And I'm confident that they're coming to Cabinet if not the next Cabinet meeting, not Wednesday's Cabinet meeting, in the next month or two. We need to get to move on with this, Chair, and this has been one of those areas that was slightly delayed with the impact of the COVID pandemic. But I know there's some quite wide-ranging options that Councillor Martin and his group are considering, and we need to get on and start delivering them. But I'm not going to preempt what they're going to bring forward to council, because that would be unfair and unreasonable for me to do that. But most certainly I'm looking forward to seeing the recommendations of the working group.
Okay, thank you. Can I then finally move on to Councillor Will Adams?
Thank you, Chair. Again, page 21, paragraph 19 at the table at the bottom this time. Just regarding Pemberton Leisure Centre, reference is made to researching the sports hall at Pemberton Leisure Centre. What is the current situation with the dual use agreement with the school, and what are the implications of investing in the Academy sports hall? There's quite a few whispers going around within the community about this. I'm just wondering where we're at as a council. Thank you.
Who would like to come in?
Nobody. I think this is, I've described this as still work in progress. I think the school has made their intentions very, very clear. We thought that we did have an agreement in principle to extending the agreement, and on the back of that, some further investment would be made in the centre. I think we're now at a place where we're going to have to revisit that. So I don't know what the outcome of that will be. Will, I think obviously the schools have had challenges during this COVID period. I suspect it's not been a top priority for them, but it's something that we'll be revisiting fairly soon. But I don't have an answer for you yet.
Chair, if I may as well, Will, I think if you remember the corporate, the leisure strategy that Mick delivered last month also makes a huge inference in regard to leisure local. And I know that an awful lot of time is being taken up by the officers at the moment looking at other local options in not just Penwortham, but in the entire borough. So if, and I'm not saying this will happen, but if the current facilities as they currently exist in Penwortham aren't continued, then there'll be alternative options that will enhance the offering for the local community in Penwortham. But there's a long way to go yet, and there's a lot of work still to do. And as you know yourself, Will, there's other sites in Penwortham that are being actively looked at for potential development as well. But the leisure local is going to be, and that the initiative of leisure local is at the heart of everything that Mick's looking at the moment. So watch this space, I think, is the best way to summarise.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I'll not come back on that, even though I have some views of my own. We'll see what transpires. Are there any members not on the committee that would like to ask any questions at this stage? The ones who aren't seem to have disappeared off the bottom of my screen. I can still see Jackie, who no, in which case, Darren, could you take us through recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes picked up through the meeting are as follows for the recommendations. Feel free to comment or make any changes. Firstly, the panel thanks the leader, Chief Executive and Shared Services Lead for attending and their detailed report. The panel looks forward to seeing the Directorate's performance indicators at a future panel meeting. The panel welcomes the offer of the corporate strategy project mandates being provided to panel members. The panel asks that a future meeting take a deep dive into the organisational development strategy, and the timeframes involved in the project to deliver a mental health programme for young people be reviewed and reported back to the panel. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can we accept those, and is there anything anybody would like to add? If not, are we all in agreement with those recommendations? Thank you, that's agreed. In which case, if I can now move on to item 6, which is the Corporate Performance Management Framework Review. And we have the same team. So if I could invite the Leader of the Council and the Chief Executive, along with Vicky, to put forward this report.
Thanks, Chair, and I do intend to be brief because it's very self-explanatory. I must publicly thank Vicky again for producing an excellent, I hope you all agree, an excellent policy document that's easy to understand, it's clear, it's concise, and you know, we often, and I think Colin, you're one of the words for challenging this, for the fact that documents have become unreadable sometimes, but this is clearly anything but. It's a critical element as well as we move forward as an authority. Members of the committee will recall that as part of the challenges we faced through the annual governance statement, it was the accuracy of the data that was being used to report on corporate performance. We have to have sound and absolute, what's the word I'm looking for here? Yeah, robust data that we've got confidence in if the data's not robust and we have no confidence in it, I really don't know how we can move forward. So what Vicky and the team have put forward here is just highlighting clearly how to the plan for how we take this performance forward and report annually, and then how we measure, and then critically what the schedule is for this reporting structure as well, and then how we feed that into yourselves, and then the cycle starts again. On that, I have nothing more to add, and unless Gary or Vicky have, but I think it's a good piece of work. It's not just shared services again that will be benefiting from this. It's every function of the council that will be feeding into this corporate reporting cycle. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. If I could just come in with a couple of questions. I made reference earlier to more performance information on our services such as gateway, missed bins and the like. Is this something that could be reflected more explicitly within the framework?
Were you going to speak then, Vicky? Yeah.
Yes, I was. I wasn't sure whether you were going to, but yes, I can. Thank you, Chair. So on page, just looking at page 5 of the framework, so when you get to the blue section, which is review and report, there's a box there that details overview and scrutiny in terms of the expectations and the information that will be made available. So it says the corporate performance report, the business plan monitoring statement, which we referred to earlier, which will provide a much more detailed breakdown of the local performance measures that each service uses to manage its performance and to understand how things are going. And then there's also the option there to have a scrutiny focus, which I think we've just agreed tonight in terms of the deep dive into the organisational development strategy, and that will give you an opportunity to define exactly what you would like to look at and any performance you might want to pick out in more detail. So we could strengthen that and perhaps provide some examples, but I suppose the aim of this document is to be very clear and focused and brief, so that it's easy to read and digest, but we can certainly strengthen that if you feel that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. And just one other, page 33, paragraph 11, there's a table there. Reference is made to data quality. Based on our previous issues, what's being done to ensure the information reported is accurate and reliable?
So, Chair, I can take that one again if you like. We're going back through all of our performance measures and working with each of the officers involved to help them, and we've provided a clear, straightforward document with some guidance on to make sure that the information that's collected is robust, and then we have a check-in procedure in place to make sure that a senior officer then checks that information off so that it's accurate. We're also providing some additional training and support and drop-in workshops for officers who are responsible for sourcing and collecting data, so that we're absolutely assured that the correct processes are being followed, because it's so important that we get that right and that we're able to provide you as members with accurate performance information. So there's a range of things that we're doing now to really make sure that we're on top of that, including working with the third-party information as well that we access to make sure that we've got the right sources for information and things like that. So lots of different things going on around data quality.
Okay, thank you. At this point, are there any questions from members not on the committee? And I can't see any indications. Darren, do we have any recommendations? Other than to note the answers we've just received?
Yes, Chair, and whether the panel would like to take a view on whether consideration be given to the level of performance indicators and performance information included on page 5 of the framework. It's up to the panel, really.
Okay, would the panel like more information there? I've got I think 3 nods, and okay, I think the answer is yes to that. So if we could agree to that request, thank you. And if I could thank Councillor Foster, Gary Hall and Vicky Willits for their attendance, and thank you for quite an involved and detailed response to our line of inquiry. The next item is item 7, the budget monitoring quarter 2 2020 to 2021. And if I could welcome Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, Cabinet Member for Finance, Property and Assets, and James Thompson, the Deputy Director of Finance, Section 151 Officer. And if I could invite them to present their report.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just check you can hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Great stuff. Okay, so agenda item 7, just an explanation of where the council sees itself at the end of financial quarter 2, halfway through the financial year. I think the headline for me is, despite everything that's going on, and if you read into the body of the report, there is a lot of COVID-related stuff going on. But despite all that, we're now forecasting that at the end of the year will be some £55,000 out on a revenue budget of £14 million. And I think, as far as budgeting is concerned, that's as close to being accurate as you're ever going to get. So if you want to whistle-stop tour through the tables, table 1 is the revenue budget, the one I think that we're all most familiar with, and gives you some of the variances. Again, some fairly small variances on some. The forecast additional COVID-19 expenditure of just £2.591 million is there, that distorts the thing a little bit. But other than that, across the directorates there, fairly small variances, I would argue. And then the reports after that try to give some context to those variances. In the past, since I asked for the staffing vacancies to be reported to scrutiny, that seems to be one of the items that's raised most interest from members. So in Appendix A, the staffing vacancies, you'll see I've asked, hopefully you'll have noticed, I've asked for a bit more context to be provided behind the vacancies. So if there is a delay in filling a post, we try to provide some information to scrutiny as to why there's been a delay and what is likely to, or what the plan is to fill that vacancy. And then the capital programme, there is going to be some slippage, and I have encouraged officers to be open and honest about that and report it early, so that we can reprofile the capital programme, so that we're not coming to the end of the year and reporting on a significant difference and then saying, well, we knew that anyway because of COVID / the weather / whatever it was. So I make no apology for reprofiling, and indeed we may reprofile it again as circumstances change. But that's the report. I think it's a hugely encouraging report on our financial basis. Oh, sorry, one other thing I ought to say is I've asked for a future report to come either to Cabinet or Scrutiny that brings all the COVID-related activity together in one place. And if we can, and the accountants are arguing with me about whether we can do this or not, is to actually take it out of the monitoring report so that we can monitor our original budget that we agreed in February and say, this is what we all agreed, this is what we recognise, and this is what we're doing about that. Oh, and over here, there's a separate report about all the money we've had in from the government in various tranches and various different grants for COVID, and what we're doing to make sure we spend that money in the right place. Just think that would be really helpful in terms of keeping an eye on the budget that we set, and yet also in being able to see the significant amount of money we've had from government in the varying different grants and how we're spending it. So hopefully that will come forward in the future, and it will just help everybody. I'm happy to take any questions that people have. I'll try and answer them as long as they're not too technical. And I've got James as my professional backup in case somebody does start asking questions about business rates relief, etc., etc. But with that, happy to commend the report to you, Chairman, and look forward to your questions and comments.
Okay, thank you. Could I bring in Councillor Will Adams?
Thank you, Chair. Page 47, paragraph 5. what is the current situation with regards to the funding for COVID-19 support? Has the council been reimbursed for everything it has spent supporting residents and businesses to date? And also, what is the situation with regards to other impacts such as reduced car parking income, leisure centres, etc.? Thank you.
Okay, well, I think I kind of alluded to what my likely responses to that is in my opening remarks. This is something that changes every week. We did get, as I think members would recall, £20 million to support local businesses through in the first lockdown, and we were enormously successful in getting that money out to where it needed to be. Over 95% of that money, I think, was handed out to a range of businesses. We have had a couple of £1 million, I'm not sure of the exact figure, to support our activities around COVID, and we've been busy making sure that is spent in the right place. But then, of course, there was a lot of publicity about the funding that was agreed, agreed in inverted commas, when we went into Tier 3. But we were only in Tier 3 for a number of days before we went into a new, we're not allowed to call it a lockdown, I can't remember what the official terminology is, but there'll be more funding for that as well. And that's the very reason, Councillor Adams, why I asked for a separate report. I think at the end of all this, whenever the end may be, people will be saying, well, you received money for this, you received money for that, you received money for the other. And I think it would be really useful both for the leadership team and cabinet and for individual councillors who might get asked by the public if there is a report that brings all that together. Bring that all together to say, yeah, we did receive that money. Yeah, we did. Yeah, you're right. You know, the Treasury are saying they give us 3 million for this and 2 million for that. Here's the report. Here's what that money was for. And some of this money, it's quite restrictive of what we can spend it on. And some of the money has less guidance. So I think we need to be able to identify and justify how we've spent that money going forward. So it's a moving picture. A lot of the money that we've had, certainly the money that we've had that was time sensitive, has gone. It's been spent. And I know I've had contacts from local businesses who were enormously grateful and in fact enormously impressed at the speed with which things like grants for catering, retail and hospitality were given out. We didn't charge any rent, for instance, on all of our tenants for 3 months. And tenants who are still affected by COVID have been told to come back to us now, and we're looking at further rent holidays. So it's a fluid and complicated picture. But I, would just finish by paying tribute to the staff who've had all this extra work to do. And it's all right giving us all this extra money, but it does take up an enormous amount of staff time to get the money out there. And I think they've done a sterling job. But as I say, I'm hoping we'll be able to come forward with a report that does pull all that together in one simple place.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I bring James Thompson in here?
Thanks, Chair. Just to reiterate, what Councillor Thompson's saying is correct. The report does also outline in paragraph 33 that any of the funding we've received is pretty much assumed to be spent in year rolled forward. I put a W in that for some reason. I don't know why, or fully committed against, really. So when you ask the question whether or not the funding we've received is sufficient to cover the costs, that's what we're assuming that at the moment it is. Now, this report was written 2 or 3 weeks ago. Those figures are definitely out of date. We've received more funding from government, especially on the second tranche of business grants. So this will of course be updated, but I agree with what Councillor Thompson's saying, really, is that we need to provide a specific update regarding COVID funding and expenditure, because it does change day to day, really, and definitely week to week. So.
Okay, thank you, James.
Okay, thank you. Could I bring in Councillor Colin Coulton?
Thank you, Chair. Page 48, Table 1 mentions a targeted saving of £187,000. How is this saving going to be achieved?
I'm sorry, Councillor Coulton, I can't. Oh, sorry. I think that was shared services. That was the target for savings in shared services. And we're being quite honest there, because of several different HR issues, we're not going to make the total savings against shared services that we thought. The original budget was 305,000, and as you can see there, it's 187. But that's from the shared services review. I think Gary's got his hand up as well.
Thank you, Joe. So I think, as James said, this is at a point in time. There are some propositions going to the next council, which will present some further savings as options for the council, and should they be taken, then that target will be achieved.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Could I bring in Councillor Colin Sharples?
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at page 49 and we'll talk about the garden waste surplus income. That income is more than expected. Does this mean that a further cut could be made to charges?
I think I'm, first of all, enormously gratified and impressed with our residents. We did reduce the amount that we charge, as you say, and that generated extra people. We're now into the third year, are we, of brown bins, and the experience at most councils is that what happens is it tapers off slightly. So in the first year, you get a number of people sign up, and then it begins to taper off. I'm gratified that ours hasn't. I actually think what this shows is that £25 is a good price point, because it's a price point at which more people are prepared to sign up. So I think the other thing I would argue is that there are some people, aren't there, Councillor Howarth, who only signed up for this 1 year because they couldn't go to the tip during the lockdown. So he'll regret telling me that. So I think it shows that £25 is a good price point, because people are prepared to sign up to it. But I think it would be interesting to see what happens next year.
Yeah, well, if it was £20, maybe even more people will sign up to it. You never know.
A conversation to be had elsewhere. But my view at this stage is that the evidence is that £25 is a well accepted price point.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's your answer, and you're going to stick to it. I didn't sign up initially on a point of principle, having opposed it throughout. So if I can take you on the same page, 49, court summons income deficit. Why is there a £114,000 deficit here?
Because we haven't been taking people to court. I think that's...
Could you possibly elaborate a bit more on that?
But I just think the situation that we're in, we've been encouraging the council to be as sensitive as we can be. So we've not been chasing. Yeah. Oh, and even if we were, Gary informed me the court's been closed. But even if the court was open, we haven't been chasing people. That's not to say that as life returns slowly to normal, whenever that will be, we do our best to recover the debts that are outstanding, because we have a responsibility to do that. But at the moment, we're not chasing people. We are writing to people, we're encouraging people, but we're certainly not taking people to court.
Okay, thank you. Could I bring in Councillor Karen Walton?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of issues on page 51 about staff vacancies. The first one is about planning, is when will the second enforcement officer be recruited? And how do we ensure we get value for money from the retained consultant in planning? And my second issue is about the licensing vacancy that we've had for head of licensing, which has been vacant for almost for over a year. Could you explain why this post hasn't been filled, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I did say I've asked for more context. I accept that those two, probably there isn't the context in the report, but I have also said myself and James Thompson here presenting the finance. So if we get questions about individual directorates, it's probably not for us to answer. But Gary has indicated he's happy to take your question on, Karen.
Thank you, Matthew. So just in terms of those two particular posts, the issue around the two enforcement officers posts is that one of the things we need to determine around the kind of value for money aspect is there sufficient work to justify having two officers? My experience to date and my knowledge of the throughput of that service is that we don't. So for that reason, we haven't yet appointed to the second position. What does happen, Karen, and this alludes to your question around how do you get value from the consultant, is that it is a very complex area in terms of the law, and you build up experience in those areas around some of the complexities of some of the enforcement issues. So to ensure that we get value for money, what we are doing is the consultant is dealing with what I would call the more complex cases that involve lots of legal issues, very complex legal issues, and the officer that we have appointed is dealing with the lower level stuff. I think this is a model that we might make more permanent because I think it's a better model. This is an area where we've struggled to recruit because of the complexity of it. So the solution that you've got in place now, whilst it's described as a temporary model, it's something that we will consider. And again, we'll discuss this with members. We might put forward as a more permanent model. Sorry, Karen, that was the licensing and enforcement. In terms of the senior post in that area, we've held that vacant on the basis of the review of shared services. So there are management arrangements in place to cover that, and they've worked pretty well, I think, in that intervening period. But it will all be picked up as part of shared services phase 2. Assuming that those are approved at Council in November.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Colin Coulton.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Hunt, the curator of the museum, retired some months ago. Is he going to be replaced? And what is the future for our museum? Thank you.
Well, we did have a report. This again is going into a shared services situation. Chorley, our colleagues in Chorley have got lots of experience with places like Astley Hall, and so it's the intention is to run a shared services across the visitor economy, I think they call it in Chorley. So you'll see that in shared services in the next budget, Colin.
Chair, again, if I could just clarify, we put some temporary arrangement in for 12 months, and then we were going to review it. So at the end of 12 months, we'll review the effectiveness of that arrangement or not, and South Ribble members can decide whether they want to continue it or not.
Okay, thank you.
Could I bring in Councillor Will Adams?
Thank you, Chair. Page 51 in the grid there under governance and assurance. Based on the Council's previous issues with corporate governance and assurance, does the number of vacancies in the team concern you, and what steps are being taken to try and strengthen this?
I think I've said before that any gaps in our establishment concern me. The budget ought to be set against our corporate priorities, and we ought to be spending money on the team to deliver those corporate priorities. So that's the exact reason why this vacancies report is my own personal initiative, so that people like yourselves can put pressure on for us to fill those vacancies or explain why they're not. So does it concern me? Yes, it does. What's Gary going to do about it? I'm going to ask him now.
Okay, Chair. So there was a link here to the governance programme that we needed to implement, the improvements in governance. These vacancies alone don't concern me in terms of moving forward on the governance arrangements. The previous reports that have been produced in terms of our progress on dealing with some of the governance issues indicate that about 90% of the things that we wanted to do to make some of the governance arrangements more robust have already been done. We set ourselves a really challenging, I hope he's having a drink, challenging target in terms of some of the things we wanted to do. We wanted to get most of the things done by September, October this year, and I'm pleased to report that most of those things have been done. So the vacancies themselves are not impacting on our ability to deliver.
Apologies, I was making a drink there. Nothing else that might have been sounded like similar. Sorry about that.
I don't know if there's a problem with your tablet, but you do appear to be muted, but we are getting this stream of water in the background. So we're not far off now. So if I could move on. Page 58, reserves. The Cabinet member has previously committed to reviewing reserves. What progress is being made with the review?
It is ongoing. It is happening. And as you said, I've made a commitment before, and my view hasn't changed since I was the opposition's finance spokesman, that what we need is a proper review to determine whether the level of reserves are appropriate or not. My view, looking at it as an overall picture, is we are probably carrying too much cash, and we can't do that for the residents of South Ribble unless we can justify it. And I've seen James wants to indicate, so perhaps he'd like to follow that up.
Yeah, James, if you would like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's correct. We are going to review reserves in depth this year, and it will be part of the budget process, which will be taken to Cabinet in January. Councillor Thomas is correct. We do need to review the reserves, but some reserves may be deemed too high, but others may not be. A lot will depend on any announcements we get relating to COVID, but also the spending review, which we expect to get in the middle of November. So we just need to bear that in mind as well. But yes, certainly there will be an in-depth review of reserves, and we've actually already started it. So.
Okay, thank you. Could I bring in Councillor Karen Walton?
Thank you, Chair. My question is about, on page 59, the Borough Investment Account, which was created for the purpose of purchasing investment property to generate income for the council. There remains an amount of 3.9 million, and I've noticed that on page 58 it says that some of the money will be used for Worden Hall and Hull Village Hall, and to some amounts for the Leyland Town deal. Is there an update of what opportunities it might be otherwise spent on as well, or is it just going to be to fund projects that are already there in the projects? Thank you.
Okay, so I think we did come to council not long into this administration and change the emphasis of the borough investment account so that it was more about investing in assets in the borough rather than going to, dare I say it, Southampton to consider buying an office block there. And the experience of all these similar accounts is that, whilst £4.5 million sounds like an awful lot of money, when you're trying to invest in assets to bring in income, it's really not that much. It really isn't. And if you recall, we appointed a consultant to search for things for us to invest that £4.5 million in, and in 2 years, so we had this account for 2 years during the previous administration. They only came forward with one opportunity, and that was the office block in Southampton. So we said we would change the emphasis on what we do with this money, and it is to invest in the borough. As far as the Hull Village Hall, we have funded the capital project from that fund, but with the full intention that that is repaid. So we haven't given the Village Hall a grant, we've given them a long-term loan, and they've produced a business plan that says how they'll repay that money. So every single penny of that, plus a little bit of interest, will go back into the fund. And I think that's how we see this coming forward. As part of the town, excuse me, as part of the town deal, we may have to pump prime. A really important part of the Leyland Town deal is to purchase 2 significant properties just off Huff Lane. We have had a grant that will help do that, but if it's not enough, if it does fall just short, and we need to spend that money before the town deal money comes through, then we will fund it through that. But I'm quite clear, and I think the Cabinet have been quite clear, the borough investment account is to invest in assets in the borough, and that is a change in emphasis. I accept that from the previous administration.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and finally, could I bring in Councillor Colin Sharples?
Thank you, Chair. Last question. It's about page 79. It's about the capital programme. The capital budget appears to be being spent as planned at the halfway point. How confident is the Cabinet member that the capital programme will be developed by year end?
Well, because of what I said in my opening remarks about reprofiling through the year, I'm far more confident, I would say, than I have been probably about any capital programme I've seen. And I hope this doesn't come back to bite me. But I've been one of those members who's been critical in the past of a capital programme that fails significantly to deliver. And I do think we should be very wary of over-promising and then under-delivering on a capital programme. We ought to be, we ought to be robust, and we ought to be realistic about what we can deliver. So, as I said earlier, we are reprofiling. We are being honest and open, and if things come up that mean we won't be able to deliver things on time, we'll say so early. And so it may well be that come Q3 report, there might be some things in there where we'll have to say, well, actually, we thought we were going to deliver that this year, but now it looks like it's going to slip. But with that reprofiling going on all the time, we ought to be able to say, with some accuracy, what we are going to spend and where we're going to spend it. And that's why, as you say, it does look very encouraging at the moment.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Chair, you're muted. You're muted, Chair.
Sorry, I must, my finger's not working. Are there any members on committee, not on committee, sorry, who would like to ask any questions? I don't see any. Oh, Councillor Olty.
Hi, thank you very much. Just a quick question. The model that you talked about with the Village Hall investment and hoping to recuperate monies from that, is that something that we can roll out, because there are potential opportunities in Farringdon as well as other areas?
Councillor Olty, if you are aware of an opportunity for a community group who are as robust and well governed as Hoole Village Hall and can come up with a business plan that shows that any investment we make in the fixed assets, then we'd be happy to look at it.
That's lovely. Do we have a service to support them? If somebody was to come forward with a plan?
Yeah, you encourage them to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from members not on committee? In which case, if I could ask Darren to take us through recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the themes picked up during the discussion for comment and agreement by the panel are: the panel thanks the Cabinet member and Deputy Director for answering the panel's questions and the detailed report. The panel welcomes the relatively small variance in budget. The panel supports the Cabinet member's proposal to bring together all COVID-related financial information into one report for monitoring purposes. The panel looks forward to the outcome of the review of reserves as part of the next budget process. and the panel is encouraged with the delivery and reprofiling of the capital programme. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can we agree those? And is there anything anybody would like to add? Right, I'm taking that as agreement. Thank you. So if we can say that as agreed, if I could thank Councillor Tomlinson and James Thompson for their attendance and input. If I could thank everybody else this evening who's attended, taken part, and that brings us to the end of the meeting. So enjoy the rest of the evening.